I never loved you. Daniel's voice hit the microphone and landed on Anna like a physical thing. She stopped walking. Not once. Not for a single day in 10 years. I looked at you and I felt nothing. I have always felt nothing. The rooftop went completely silent. 100 people, all of them still, all of them holding their breath at the same time like the air had been vacuumed out of the night. Anna stood in the middle of the crowd in her white dress, with her champagne glass in her hand, and the smile on her face dissolved so slowly it was almost worse than if it had collapsed all at once, like watching something beautiful come apart in slow motion. Daniel. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He didn't look at her. And I am done. Daniel said it simply. The way you say something you rehearsed until it stopped feeling like anything. Tonight, in front of everyone you invited. Everyone who thinks we're here to celebrate something. He almost smiled. We are celebrating something. Me finally telling the truth. The phones were everywhere now. Little glowing screens all turned toward her face, toward her hands, toward the champagne glass trembling in her grip. Anna's jaw tightened. She started moving toward him. Daniel, stop! You need to stop talking right now. Her voice was low and shaking. Everything I told you was management. He took a step toward her and lowered his voice just enough to make it feel private, while the whole rooftop was still hearing every word. The I love yous, the it's going to be okay, the let's try again. All of it was management, Anna. Keeping you functional, keeping the house running, keeping up appearances. He looked her in the eyes. There was never anything real. The champagne glass slipped from Anna's hand. It hit the floor and shattered, and the sound cut through the silence like something snapping in half. Nobody moved to clean it up. Anna looked at the broken glass on the floor. Then she looked up at her husband of 10 years, and her face did something she couldn't control. It cracked. Just for a second. Just enough for everyone watching to see it. Daniel saw it too, and he kept going. I've been with someone else for 2 years. He said it the way you announce a business decision. You couldn't give me a child. His voice dropped. Anna's vision blurred at the edges. And that was when the elevator doors opened. The crowd turned. Vanessa walked out. Anna's best friend. The woman who had driven her to the hospital the second time. The woman who had sat on the bathroom floor with her and held her while she fell apart. The woman who had cried with her, prayed with her, known every single secret Anna had ever said out loud in the dark. That Vanessa, walking straight across the rooftop in a fitted black dress, her stomach round and full and impossible to misread. Pregnant. Very. Visibly. Pregnant. The crowd reacted before Anna could, gasps layering over each other. Anna stood absolutely still. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Daniel looked at Anna with something that might have been satisfaction. She's due in 3 months. He said it flat. Something you could never give me. A real family. He looked Anna up and down. Slowly. The problem was always you. Anna's legs stopped working. It started at her knees and moved up, and the room tilted sideways in a way that had nothing to do with the champagne she hadn't even finished, and everything went white at the edges, and she was falling before she understood she was falling. She didn't hit the ground. Arms caught her from behind. Strong, certain, immediate. One at her back and one under her arm, pulling her upright against a chest that felt like standing next to something solid and permanent and completely unmovable. She didn't know whose they were. She didn't know anything. The rooftop was noise and spinning light and the sound of the crowd erupting around her, and she was barely holding on to consciousness. Then she heard Daniel's voice cut through everything. "Put my wife down. Right now." The arms around her didn't move. A man's voice answered. Low, almost bored. Like Daniel had said something mildly interesting rather than something meant to be a command. "Then you should have treated her like one." No. Did he really just say that? Drop disgusting in the comments if your jaw is on the floor. Drop it gets worse if you are ready for what is coming. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city below. And if you are new here, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications because you do not want to miss how this ends. Trust me, stay right there. Because the man who just walked in and changed everything, you need to see this. Footsteps, moving fast. The crowd splitting apart on both sides, cool night air on her face. The noise of the rooftop fading behind her, and then elevator doors, and then the lobby, and then outside air, and then the back seat of a black SUV, and the city of Atlanta moving past the windows in long, blurred streaks of gold, and she had no clear memory of any of the in-between. She stared at the ceiling of the car. Then the man holding her shifted and set her gently upright, and she felt it again before he let go completely. One short, sharp cough. He turned his head to the side, covered his mouth with his fist, cleared his throat quietly, and straightened up like it hadn't happened. Anna blinked. He was already sitting back on his side of the seat, composed, looking out his window. Korean. Tall even sitting down. Broad shoulders under a dark suit, the collar sitting just high enough to hide where something began at the base of his neck. One hand resting loose on his knee like a man with nowhere urgent to be and nothing pressing on his mind. Anna stared at him. Did everyone see that? He turned to look at her. His eyes were steady, dark. He didn't soften it. Yes. She nodded. Everyone. Yes. She turned back to the window. Atlanta kept going outside the glass. Restaurants full, traffic moving. The whole city doing what it did on a Friday night like her entire life hadn't just been set on fire in public on a rooftop in front of people she had personally invited to watch it happen. She breathed through her nose. The man was quiet for a moment. Then, without looking at her, he said, "Tomorrow, none of those people will matter." She looked at him. He looked back, not performing comfort, not giving her something to hold on to because it sounded nice, just saying it the way you say something you know to be true. She didn't answer. He didn't push. He dropped her at Tasha's building without her giving him the address. She noticed that, filed it away somewhere in the back of her mind to deal with later. He walked her to the door. Not inside, just to the door, like someone who understood exactly where the line was without being told. She knocked. Tasha opened it in 20 seconds. Silk bonnet, phone in hand, and one look at Anna's face shifted everything on Tasha's own face into something sharp and dangerous and completely awake. What happened? It wasn't a question. The man behind Anna spoke before she could. Someone hurt her tonight. Tasha's eyes moved to him. Who? Her husband. The word landed. Tasha's hand tightened on the door. She grabbed Anna's arm and pulled her inside, and when she looked back at the man, her voice had dropped into something quiet and precise. Thank you for bringing her here. He nodded once. Wait, Tasha said. He turned back. What's your name? Park Ji-hoon. He turned and walked back down the hallway. Tasha watched him go for 3 seconds. Then she closed the door and turned around and pulled her sister into her arms. Anna stood stiff at first, jaw locked, eyes dry. She had been strong her entire adult life. She had survived things that would have flattened other people, and she had kept going every single time because that was who she was. She was not going to fall apart in a hallway. Then Tasha squeezed her, and everything broke. The sound that came out of Anna didn't sound like her. It was deep and ugly, and it shook her whole body and came from somewhere below words. From the place where 10 years of believing something that was never true had been stored. She grabbed her sister's shirt and cried the way you cry when you've been holding something heavy for so long, your arms finally and completely give out, gasping, shaking, helpless in a way she hated and couldn't stop. Tasha held her and didn't say a word. No shushing. No, it's going to be okay. Just her arms around her sister and her hand on the back of her head, and the particular silence of someone who loves you enough to stay inside the hard thing with you instead of trying to rush you out of it. Outside the window, 2 black security vehicles sat parked on the street below. Nobody went near them. Later that night, long after the crying had emptied itself out into something exhausted and hollow, they sat on the couch wrapped in the same blanket they had shared as children when their mother watched late-night movies and the world felt small and safe and manageable. Anna stared at the wall. Tasha stared at the window. Through the glass, they could see Ji-hoon on the street below, standing near the black SUV, talking quietly to 2 men. Calm, unhurried. Like a man who had decided to be somewhere and had no intention of leaving. It was 2 a.m. Tasha watched him for a long time. Then she turned to Anna with the very specific expression she got when she was about to say something Anna wasn't going to want to hear. "Okay," she said carefully. "No," Anna said. "I haven't said anything. You have your face." "I always have a face. It's attached to my head." "Tasha, that man downstairs." Tasha pointed at the window with her mug. "The one who carried you out of a full rooftop like it was nothing. Like catching falling women is just his Thursday. He is still out there." "I know." "It's 2 a.m, Anna." "I know that too." Tasha set her mug down. "I'm just saying. If a man looked at my husband the way that man looked at Daniel when he told him to put you down, and then showed up outside my building at 2 a.m. just to make sure I was inside safely." She shook her head slowly. "I would marry him immediately, on the spot. No paperwork necessary. You don't know anything about him. I know he caught you before you hit the floor while your husband was too busy humiliating you to notice you were falling." Tasha said it flat and final. "That's a more than adequate introduction." Anna didn't answer, because there was nothing to say to it that wasn't completely true. She pulled the blanket tighter around herself and looked at the ceiling, and very deliberately did not think about the man standing on the street below, making sure she was safe. She did not think about his arms catching her before she hit the ground. She did not think about what it felt like to be held by someone steady when everything around her was falling apart. She failed at all of it completely. Ji-hoon came back at 9 a.m. He brought breakfast from a place on Peachtree that Anna had mentioned once, offhand, at a charity function 6 months ago in a conversation she barely remembered having. He remembered it. He came in and set the bags on Tasha's kitchen counter and unpacked containers with the ease of a man who was unbothered by unfamiliar spaces, like being in a stranger's kitchen on a Saturday morning was completely unremarkable. Tasha stood in the doorway in her bonnet, watching him with the expression of someone being thoroughly charmed while actively trying to look like they weren't. Anna sat at the kitchen table and watched him too. Different in daylight. Still quiet. Still composed. but small things she hadn't caught the night before. The way his suit collar sat just high enough to hide something at the base of his neck. The way he glanced at her once, quick, before he set the food down. Just checking. Not asking. Just making sure. They were halfway through breakfast when it happened. He coughed. Once. Quick. He covered his mouth with his fist, cleared his throat, reached for his water, kept talking. Smooth. Practiced. Like a man who had done this particular recovery so many times it had become automatic. Anna set her fork down. You okay? He looked at her. Bad coffee. Said it without a pause, without blinking. Tasha accepted it and the conversation moved on, and Ji-hoon moved on with it, and the moment passed in the space of about 4 seconds. But Anna held it. The cough on the rooftop when he was carrying her, the cough now over breakfast. The way he moved it past like it was nothing, like a man with a lot of practice at making something look like nothing. She filed it away. She didn't say anything else about it. 3 days later, Daniel started his campaign. It began with messages. 12 texts in one morning alone, each one a different costume on the same threat. Divorce court, financial audits, character witnesses. He had documentation. He had a lawyer. He was going to make sure the only version of the story anyone heard was his. Then it moved online. A post. Anonymous except that it wasn't. Not to anyone paying attention. A long, carefully constructed account of a controlling wife. An emotionally unavailable woman. A man who had suffered quietly for years inside a cold and loveless marriage before finally finding the courage to leave. Written just carefully enough to sound reasonable. Just sympathetic enough to make people nod. The comments started immediately. People who had been standing on that rooftop. People who had watched Daniel humiliate his wife in front of 100 witnesses and were now, reading his account, deciding there must be something they didn't know. Something she hadn't told them. Something that explained it. Always 2 sides, someone commented. She seems like a lot, said someone else. Anna sat on Tasha's couch reading every single comment, and her hands were shaking so badly she dropped the phone twice. Coward, Tasha said from over her shoulder. Just that word. Flat and final, like a door closing. Anna picked the phone back up, read it again, like the second reading was going to somehow rearrange what it said into something different. Ji-hoon read it in 2 minutes flat. He didn't pace. He didn't make it emotional. He read the entire post and then looked up and picked up his phone. Marcus. The voice on the other end came back immediately. Already saw it. Pull everything on Daniel Brooks. Every financial record, every business account, every outstanding loan and liability. He paused. Today. A beat of silence. Should I be concerned about how calm you sound right now? No. That's always when I'm most concerned. Ji-hoon hung up. He looked at Anna. She looked back at him. You don't have to do that, she said. I know. I can handle Daniel. I know you can. He said it without arguing, without performing patience. There's a difference between being able to handle something and being expected to do it alone. He looked at her steadily. That's all. She stared at him. He didn't look away. She didn't have an answer for it that wasn't true, so she didn't give one. 2 days later, Daniel was in a meeting when his assistant walked in and slid a note across the table. Marcus Kim. Urgent. He stepped into the corridor and answered, and Marcus's voice came through the phone, perfectly pleasant and almost friendly, like a man calling to discuss something entirely ordinary. Mr. Brooks, Marcus Kim. I'm calling on behalf of Park Ji-hoon. Daniel's frown was immediate. I know who Ji-hoon is. Wonderful. Then you'll also know that the primary loan currently backing your Midtown development project, the one your entire company's next 18 months depends on, runs through his investment firm. The corridor got very quiet. Loan agreements have conduct clauses, Marcus continued. Reputational ones, broadly worded, interpretable in a number of directions. A pause. Mr. Park wanted to make sure you were personally aware of this before you continued building your current public narrative about your wife. The posts, the messages, the threats. Another pause. All of it, really. Daniel's voice dropped. Is that a threat? It's a suggestion. Threats are less considerate. The post came down within the hour. The messages stopped before noon. Tasha found out 3 days later when Marcus mentioned it in passing, and she laughed so hard she had to lower herself completely to the floor and sit there. One phone call, she wheezed, hand on her chest. He dismantled 10 years of Daniel's entire financial leverage with one phone call, before his food got cold. Anna sat across from her, trying and genuinely failing not to smile. It's not funny, she said. It's a little funny. Tasha, Daniel spent 10 years making you feel like nothing, and this man had him folding up his little gossip post and apologizing to the internet in under 48 hours. Tasha wiped her eye. That's not funny. That's art. Anna looked at the ceiling. She thought about what Ji-hoon had said. The difference between being able to handle something and being expected to do it alone. She had been turning it over in her mind more than felt comfortable, more than felt safe. She brought it to him directly. They were in his car outside a grocery store on a Saturday, and she turned in her seat and looked at him and said, I need you to understand something. He turned to look at her. I'm grateful, she said. For everything. But I spent 10 years with a man who used money and power to control everything around him. I need to know this isn't that. Ji-hoon looked at her for a long moment. I hear you, he said. Not defensively. Not with the edge of a man whose intentions have been questioned. Just quietly. That's not what this is. How do I know that? You don't yet. He said it straight. But I'm not going to manage you. I'm not going to make your decisions. I'm not going to use what I have to put you in a position where you owe me something. He looked at her steadily. You could have handled Daniel. You would have figured it out. All I did was make it faster. He paused. You tell me if I ever cross a line. I'll stop. She looked at him for a long time. Then she got out of the car and went into the grocery store, and he followed her, and she spent 20 minutes pretending she wasn't thinking about what he'd just said while thinking about nothing else. After that, they just started spending time together. Not planned, not decided. Just natural, the way things are sometimes natural when two honest people end up in each other's orbits and stop pretending they don't notice. Grocery stores, his apartment, her car at 2 p.m. parked outside a coffee place while she told him about growing up in Atlanta, about her mother who could make a Sunday dinner out of absolutely nothing, about the smell of the city in summer when the heat came up off the concrete and the whole place felt alive in a way that was almost too much and completely perfect. He listened, not waiting for his turn. Actually listening, the kind of listening that makes people say things they didn't know they were going to say. One afternoon, she tried to teach him her mother's smothered chicken recipe in his kitchen, and he burned it so completely that the smoke alarm screamed twice, and they had to open every window, and Tasha, who had come along uninvited as Tasha always did, stood in the doorway with a plate of crackers, providing live commentary with the focus of a woman who took her role very seriously. He reaches for the spatula, Tasha narrated. Too late. That piece is completely gone. That whole side is gone. I think the pan itself is a casualty at this point. Tasha! Anna waved smoke away from her face. I'm documenting this. This is history. Ji-hoon stood at the stove looking at what had once been chicken with the expression of a man who genuinely could not pinpoint the exact moment things had gone this wrong. He turned and looked at Anna. She looked back at him, and she started laughing. Really laughing. The full kind. The kind that takes over your whole face and makes your eyes water and comes from somewhere deep that had been locked for a long time. He watched her laugh. Tasha, from the doorway, went completely still. She turned around and walked back to the living room and sat down and picked up her phone. She texted Marcus. Your boss just looked at my sister like she solved something for him. Marcus replied immediately, Don't tell him I know. It's going to be a whole thing. They ordered Korean food that night. Ji-hoon walked her through every dish, sliding containers across the table, explaining each one, and it turned into a real conversation about his grandmother who had made everything from scratch, and his childhood spent watching her in the kitchen, understanding nothing and appreciating none of it until she was gone. Anna listened to all of it. Then she put on Al Green. Ji-hoon looked at the speaker like it had done something that required assessment. Just listen, she said. I'm listening. You're analyzing. That's different. He looked at her. What's the difference? She stood up. Come here. He didn't want to. This was obvious. He had the look of a man being asked to do something that had no clear logical structure, and he could not determine the correct approach. But he stood up. She took his hand and put his other one at her waist and started swaying, slowly, just moving, just letting the music be what music is. He was rigid, impressively, almost admirably rigid. Like every single joint in his body had called a meeting about this and was waiting on the minutes before committing to anything. Stop thinking, she said. I'm not thinking. Ji-hoon, I can hear you thinking. Something shifted on his face, not quite a smile, something just before a smile. He exhaled, and then slowly, degree by degree, like a very precise lock releasing one tumbler at a time, he stopped fighting it. His shoulders dropped. His hand relaxed against her back. He started moving with her instead of waiting for her to finish. They swayed in his kitchen to Al Green with the takeout containers still on the table, and Tasha watching from the hallway with her hand flat against her chest, like she was physically holding something in. She turned around quietly and went back to the living room. Texted Marcus. He's completely done for. He just doesn't know it yet. Marcus. I know. I've known for weeks. It's going to be a whole thing. Tasha. Stop saying that. Marcus. You keep setting it up. The dizziness happened on a Thursday afternoon in Piedmont Park. Late light through the trees. Gold and long. And the kind of afternoon that makes Atlanta feel like the most beautiful city in the world when it wants to. Anna was mid-sentence about a corporate event she was planning, talking through the logistics, when she noticed Ji-hoon had stopped walking. He was standing with one hand on the back of a park bench, jaw set, eyes forward but not focused on anything in front of them. Like he was somewhere inside himself, managing something she couldn't see, doing the math on whatever his body was telling him. Ji-hoon, I'm fine. You stopped walking. Just catching my breath. He straightened up, adjusted his jacket, resumed walking like nothing had happened, like the last 30 seconds didn't exist. Anna watched him. He asked her a specific question about the event, something that required a real answer, and she answered it. She kept watching him as she did, the way he held himself, the care in it, the deliberateness of a man managing his own body like a problem that needed constant monitoring. That evening he ate less than usual, she noticed. She said nothing, but late that night she was coming out of the bathroom when she stopped in the hallway. Ji-hoon was in the kitchen, back to her. Jacket over the chair, sleeves rolled up, standing at the counter with a prescription bottle in his hand. He shook 2 pills out, swallowed them without water, the way you do when you've done it so many times the water stopped feeling necessary. He put the bottle in his inside jacket pocket. Then he stood at the counter with both hands flat on the surface and his head slightly down and didn't move. Not reaching for anything, not doing anything. Just standing there in his own kitchen in the quiet with his eyes on some fixed point on the counter that had nothing on it. Like a man taking a moment, the real kind, the kind you only take when you think nobody is watching. Then he straightened up and turned around. He saw her standing in the hallway. Something moved across his face, fast, gone in under a second, replaced immediately by composure so practiced it was almost seamless. "Headache," he said. She nodded. He walked past her into the living room and picked up the conversation from where they'd left it, and she followed him and said the right things and acted normal. But standing in that hallway alone for those 2 seconds before she followed him, something had settled into her chest. Cold and quiet and certain, like a fact that had been true for a while and had finally decided to stop waiting to be acknowledged. The cough on the rooftop, the cough at breakfast, the dizziness in the park, the medication, the way he stood at that counter before he turned around. She had all the pieces. She didn't have the name for it yet, but she had all the pieces. 2 weeks later, Daniel stopped negotiating and started escalating. Anna was leaving a client meeting in Buckhead, underground parking deck, heels on concrete, keys in her hand, mind still on the numbers from the presentation. She was halfway to her car when she heard them, 2 sets of footsteps behind her. She walked faster. They walked faster. She reached for her phone and was bringing it up when headlights came on directly in front of her, flooding the deck in white light. She stopped. Her heart slammed against her ribs. Then 2 men she recognized came around either side of the car. Ji-hoon security. They didn't run. They didn't yell. They just moved into the space between her and the footsteps behind her and stood there like a wall. The footsteps stopped. She turned around. 2 men she had never seen were already walking the other direction, moving fast, disappearing around a concrete pillar like smoke. She stood between Ji-hoon's team and breathed. Her hands were shaking. When she got to Ji-hoon, she sat across from him and told him every detail, and he listened to all of it without changing his expression, without interrupting, without the kind of visible anger that would have been easier to read. He sat completely still. He let her finish. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and looked at her with something behind his eyes that was held tight, controlled the way a fire is controlled. Kept in because the alternative was worse. "You're not going to any more parking decks alone. Ji-hoon, Anna." Just her name? Steady. "I can't just—" "He sent 2 men to your parking deck at night while you were alone." He said it clean and direct. "This is not a conversation about independence. This is a conversation about what Daniel is willing to do now that he's losing." He held her gaze. "Nothing is going to happen to you. That's not comfort. That's a fact." She looked at him. She believed him, completely and immediately, and without wanting to examine what that meant, she believed him, and that terrified her more than the parking deck had. She went home that night and lay in the dark, and thought about who she was now compared to who she had been a year ago. Married, stable, safe. All the words that had turned out to mean something entirely different from what she thought they meant. And now she was here, in the middle of something she hadn't planned, falling towards something she hadn't chosen, feeling more like herself than she had felt in 10 years. That scared her more than Daniel ever had. Anna arrived 20 minutes early. Her client call had ended faster than expected, and she was going to wait in the lobby of Ji-hoon's building and answer emails until he was ready. She came through the main entrance and turned left toward the elevator and stopped. The sign on the door at the end of the corridor read, "Oncology Department," in clean gray letters. She hadn't known this building had one. Through the small window in the door, she could see a waiting room, beige chairs, a television mounted high. A few people sitting in that particular way. People sit in hospital waiting rooms, the careful, deliberate stillness of people managing something bigger than they want to show. And Ji-hoon, sitting in one of the beige chairs in his full suit, briefcase beside him, jacket buttoned, looking at nothing. The air left Anna's lungs. She stepped back from the window. She stood in the corridor with her hand against the wall and her eyes on the floor, and something cold and certain spreading from the center of her chest outward like water finding its level. She already knew. She had known standing in the hallway watching him at that counter. She had known in the park. She had known the first morning at Tasha's kitchen table when she filed the cough away and told herself it was nothing. She straightened up. She walked until she found a woman in the corridor, moving fast. Badge clipped to her coat. Dr. Lee Sun-woo. Anna stepped in front of her. "The man in that waiting room." Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Park Ji-hoon. I need to know if he's all right." Dr. Lee stopped, looked at her carefully. "Are you family?" "1 second. I'm his wife." It came out before she decided to say it. She didn't take it back. Dr. Lee looked at her face for a long moment. Then she said very quietly, "He should be the one to tell you. Please." A breath. "Leukemia." Dr. Lee's voice was gentle, but she didn't wrap the word in anything. She just said it. "Advanced stage. He's been in treatment for 2 years. He's responding to some of it." She paused. "He should be the one to tell you the rest." Anna nodded. She walked to the elevator. She rode it up in silence. She sat in the chair outside his office and stared at the wall across from her and breathed and did not cry and waited. He came out of the elevator 18 minutes later. He saw her immediately. He stopped walking. He looked at her face and the composure he wore like a second skin flickered. Just once. Just for a second. Like a light behind a window in a storm. "Anna. Leukemia." She said it straight. No build-up. Just the word. "Advanced. 2 years." He was quiet. "Were you ever going to tell me? Can we go inside? Were you ever going to tell me?" He looked at her directly. "No." The word landed like something physical. She stood up. "No," he said again. Not defensive, not asking for understanding, just honest. "Because you were already surviving something. You didn't need to carry something else on top of it. That was not your decision to make." "I know." "You sat across from me." Her voice started doing something she didn't want it to do. She pressed her lips together, waited, tried again. "You let me fall in love with you." She said it out loud and didn't take it back. "And your plan was to what? Handle Daniel, settle the divorce, make sure I was okay, and then just step back. That was it?" "Yes." "That is the most arrogant thing I have ever heard in my life." He didn't answer. You decided what I could handle, without asking me. You looked at me and decided I was too broken to be trusted with the truth about someone I... She stopped, pressed her fingers to her mouth. Her eyes were burning. You don't get to do that. You don't get to make choices about my heart without me. Anna, don't say my name like that. She picked up her bag. She walked to the elevator. She pressed the button. The doors opened. She stepped inside and did not look back, and the doors closed, and she rode down alone in the silence and stared at her own reflection in the steel doors and breathed. 3 days. No call from her, no call from him. Tasha operated as a careful and completely biased middle channel. Day 1, she reported he looked fine. Day 2, she said he didn't look fine at all, actually. Day 3, unprompted, she sat down next to Anna on the couch with her tea and looked at her directly. I'm going to say something. Okay, Anna said. You're going to be annoyed. Probably. And then you're going to know I'm right. Tasha, he's been carrying a death sentence alone for 2 years. Tasha said it simply. No drama in it. Protecting everyone around him from the weight of it. Making decisions by himself so that nobody else had to feel it. She paused. Tell me that doesn't sound like someone you know. Anna stared at the wall. You spent 10 years holding a dead marriage together by yourself because walking away looked like failure, Tasha said. He spent 2 years carrying leukemia by himself because telling anyone looked like weakness. She looked at her sister. You're not angry because he lied. You're angry because you understand exactly why he did it, and that scares you. Anna didn't answer. The quiet in the apartment stretched out. Then Tasha took her hand. What are you going to do? Anna looked at the ceiling. She already knew. She had known the moment the elevator doors closed. She had gone home and sat on the bathroom floor and cried not because she was angry, although she was, but because she had understood immediately. She understood a man who locked things inside himself and called it protection, who decided alone what others could carry, who managed the people he cared about by controlling what they knew because he didn't trust the alternative. She understood it because she had been doing the exact same thing for 10 years. She stood up. I need you to drive me somewhere. It was 11 at night. He opened the door before she finished knocking. He had heard her in the hallway. He was still in his work clothes, jacket on, like he hadn't sat down all evening. He looked at her standing in his doorway, and something in his face shifted into something unguarded and quiet. She looked at him. I'm not going to pretend I'm not scared, she said. He waited. I'm terrified. She said it plainly. No performance in it. Just the truth sitting out in the open between them. I don't want to love someone and watch them leave. I have lost so much and I am so tired of losing things. He didn't say anything. But I'm more scared of walking away from something real because I was too afraid to stay. She looked at him straight. I choose you. Whatever time there is. However this goes. I choose you anyway. He reached out. He took her face in both his hands and pressed his forehead against hers and stayed there, not moving, just breathing. And she felt through his hands how long he had been holding himself together alone, how much weight lived inside the composure, how tired he was underneath it. Neither of them said anything for a long time. Then quietly, forehead still against hers, I'm sorry I decided for you. You're not allowed to do that again. Okay. Ever. Okay. She pulled back. How are you feeling? Right now. Actually. He considered it the way a man considers a question he hasn't been asked honestly in a long time. Tired, he said, but better than I was an hour ago. She sat down on his couch. Then sit down, she said, and tell me everything. He did. All of it. The diagnosis 2 years ago in a clinic in New York when he had gone in for something routine and come out carrying something that wasn't. The first round of treatment. The decision to keep working, to keep going, to not let it become the thing that defined every room he walked into. The good months, the harder ones, what the doctors said about timelines and what he chose to believe and what he had quietly stopped believing, what he was afraid of. She asked. He answered. What he wasn't afraid of. He thought about that one longer. Being forgotten, he said finally. That's the one that stays. She looked at him. You won't be, she said. At 3 a.m, she was still there. He made coffee and they sat in his kitchen, and she told him about the second pregnancy, the one she had never told anyone the full details of, and he listened to all of it without trying to fix it or redirect it or move her through it faster than she wanted to go. He just let it be what it was and stayed in it with her, which was the thing nobody had ever really done for her. They built it slowly after that. Not in grand gestures, but in small, reliable ones. Morning coffee before he left for work. Evenings when she finished a client call and came downstairs and found him in the kitchen attempting something he had no business attempting and turning around before she touched him because he always somehow knew she was there. She learned the landscape of his illness, the good weeks and the ones where his body pushed back. She learned to read the specific stillness that meant pain versus the one that meant he was just thinking. She learned when to sit next to him without asking, and when to give him the room he needed to get through something without an audience. He learned her, the anxious energy before a big event, the way she went very quiet when she was actually overwhelmed instead of just busy. Her habit of starting 6 things at once and finishing all of them through sheer force of will. They argued. Real arguments about real things. The kind that only happen when you're actually building a life with someone and not performing one. One night she was on the kitchen floor at 3 a.m. crying about something a client had said, careless and unkind. The kind of comment that by itself means nothing but lands wrong when you're already tired. He came in and sat on the floor beside her. No asking, no fixing. Just shoulder against hers until she was ready to get up. She sat with him through the bad weeks. The ones where the medication wasn't cooperating and he was too exhausted to maintain the composure he usually carried like a second skin. She watched him let himself be tired in front of her, and she understood what it cost him, and she never made him feel like it cost him anything. She was 4 months pregnant when she told him. She sat across from him at the kitchen table and watched his face while he understood what she was saying. He was still for a long time, long enough that she started to say something. Then he looked up and his voice came out completely undone in a way she had never heard from him before. Are you sure? Yes. He looked at his hands on the table, then at her. Are you scared? Yes, she said honestly. Are you? He thought about it. Yes. He reached across and took her hand. Good. She laughed. Good? Means it matters. She was 6 months along when he collapsed. She was in the other room. She heard the sound. Not a crash. The specific awful silence of a body going down without being able to catch itself. That particular absence of sound. She ran. He was on the kitchen floor on his side, eyes closed, breathing but wrong. Shallow and fast and wrong, in the specific way that took all the air out of her lungs immediately. She was on the phone with 911 before her knees hit the floor beside him. Ji-hoon. Hey, open your eyes. Look at me. Ji-hoon. His eyelids moved. I'm here, she said. I'm right here. Stay with me. 9 minutes for the ambulance. She counted every single one. The hospital was lights and voices and fast-moving scrubs, and a set of doors she was not allowed past. The waiting room was a chair she sat in for 4 hours with Marcus on one side and Tasha on the other. Tasha's hand locked around hers so tightly it should have hurt and didn't. Marcus sitting with the particular stillness of a composed man trying very hard not to stop being composed. Dr. Lee came through the doors. Her face said it before her words did. We've stabilized him. He fought hard. But the strain on his system... She paused. He's in a coma. We don't know how long. Anna nodded. One nod. Controlled. Precise. Can I see him? She walked through the doors alone. He looked smaller. That was the first thing that hit her. Ji-hoon, who always took up space without trying, who was the stillest and most certain presence in any room he walked into, looked small under the hospital sheets. The machines did the work. The monitors charted everything. The room was quiet except for the sounds of things keeping him here. She sat in the chair beside his bed. She took his hand, the one that had caught her on a rooftop. The one that had pressed to her face the night she told him she chose him? The one that had held hers on a beach in the gold afternoon light while they said vows they both meant entirely. She held it. She stayed. She stayed for hours that first night. She stayed the second night. She came every day after that and sat in the same chair and held the same hand and talked to him the way Dr. Lee had told her people in comas could sometimes hear. She told him about her day, about Seo-jun growing inside her, about the small things, the morning light in the kitchen, the grocery store, the way Atlanta smelled that week, the ordinary things he had loved to hear her talk about. Seo-jun came into the world on a Tuesday morning in the spring. She named him what Ji-hoon had said once, casually, months before. His grandfather's name, said like a man noting something for no reason at all. She had held on to it. She brought him to the hospital 2 days after he was born. Wrapped in a soft blanket, sleeping the way newborns sleep, completely and trustingly. She sat in the chair beside Ji-hoon's bed and held their son and talked to the man in the bed who still hadn't come back to her. He's here, she said. He's perfect. He has your hands. I don't know how that's possible already, but he does. Seo-jun grew up hearing about his father from the beginning, not in the language of loss, not in the way of tragedy, in the way of someone extraordinary who deserved to be known completely and truly and without softening. Anna told him about the rooftop and the man who caught her before she hit the ground, about the kitchen and the burned chicken and the Al Green dancing and the beach wedding and the way his father had looked at her the first time she said, "I choose you." She told him the hard parts too, because the real version was worth more than a comfortable one, and her son deserved the real version. Tasha was there for all of it. Louder every year, more certain every year that she was the most important person in Seo-jun's life. An argument she made loudly and regularly in front of Anna, who disputed it with equal regularity while privately agreeing completely. Marcus stayed in Atlanta. Nobody made a formal announcement about it. He just stopped going back to New York for longer than a weekend and eventually stopped pretending there was a professional reason he would. He and Tasha did. After approximately 11 months of both of them behaving like the other hadn't noticed anything, stop performing and start being honest about it. Anna watched the whole thing with the quiet satisfaction of a woman who had seen it coming from the first grocery store trip and had been waiting patiently ever since. Seo-jun was 7 the night of the gala, the Park Ji-hoon Foundation for Cancer Research, Atlanta's biggest new medical charity, black tie, full room, the kind of event Anna had once spent weeks building for other people's milestones. She stood at the center of it in a deep green gown that Tasha had picked, and Marcus had quietly agreed was perfect without being asked, and felt fully and completely like herself, in a way she hadn't expected to feel standing at the center of a room full of flowers and tablecloths, and 100 people looking at her. Seo-jun walked to the microphone in the small suit Tasha had spent 3 weeks selecting, and Marcus had ironed that morning without being asked, which Tasha had noticed and said nothing about, which was how you knew it meant something to her. He was 7 years old. He stood at the microphone and looked out at the room the way his father used to look at rooms, without being impressed by them, without being afraid of them, with the particular quiet confidence of someone who had been told their whole life exactly who they were and had decided to believe it. He said, "My dad helped people even when he was dying." The room went still. "My mom told me he didn't stop because he was sick. He just kept going." He looked up from the paper in his hand. "I want to be like that." A pause. "I hope I can be half the man he was." Anna pressed her hand over her mouth. Tasha, standing to her left, was not even attempting to contain it. Marcus, standing to her right, was studying the ceiling with an intensity it had done nothing to deserve. The room applauded. Seo-jun walked back to his mother, and she pulled him in and held him against her chest, and pressed her lips to the top of his head, and breathed him in, and he hugged her back with both arms the way children do when they mean it with everything they have. "Was that okay?" he whispered into her shoulder. "That was perfect," she said. "He would have been so proud of you." She went to the hospital that night, still in her gown. Seo-jun asleep at Tasha's, the building quiet at this hour the way hospitals get quiet after visiting hours, not empty, just held. The corridor pale and long, and so familiar by now she could walk it without looking up. She pushed the door open. The room was the same as always. The soft machine sounds, the low light, the same window with the same piece of Atlanta sky beyond it. The city glowing quietly in the dark the way it always did. She sat in the chair. She took his hand. "Your son spoke tonight." She looked at his face. "You would not have been able to hold it together, Ji-hoon. He stood up in front of 400 people at 7 years old and did not flinch once." She shook her head slowly. "He has your eyes. He has your stillness. He looked at that room the exact way you look at rooms, like it doesn't own him." She paused. "He's going to be extraordinary. You have no idea." The machines kept their rhythm. "We're okay," she said. "I need you to know that. Whatever happens, we are okay." She sat in the silence. She held his hand and sat in the silence and let the room be what it was and didn't try to make it anything else. She was about to say something more when she felt it. Pressure. The faintest possible pressure against her palm. Not a machine. Not a reflex. Something deliberate. Something that came from him and went toward her. She looked down at his hand. His finger had moved. She looked up. His eyes were opening, slowly, heavily, like a man surfacing from somewhere very deep through layers of dark and distance and time, blinking against the low light, trying to understand the ceiling, then the window, then the room, then her. His eyes found her face and stayed. Anna's breath left her body completely. For a long moment neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The machines kept their sound. The city kept its light beyond the glass. Everything in the world kept moving. His lips moved. No sound came out. But she had spent years learning to read him. She had learned the specific stillness that meant pain and the one that meant he was thinking. She had learned the full smile he only let out when it was just the two of them. She had learned all the languages he spoke without speaking. She could read her name on his lips from anywhere. She brought his hand to her face and held it there and closed her eyes, and for the first time in years she felt it. Not hope. Something past hope. Something quieter and more certain. That it was going to be okay. That it was really truly finally going to be okay. So his finger moved, his eyes opened, and Anna is right there. I need to know how you are feeling right now because I am not okay. Did you cry or did you hold it together? Drop, I cried. If this story broke you completely, drop, I held it. If you somehow kept it together. And the big question, do you think Ji-hoon is going to fully recover? Drop. He makes it. If you believe he pulls through, drop bittersweet. If you think the ending is more complicated than that. And before you go, drop your city and country in the comments because this community is watching from everywhere. And I want to see every single one of you. Let's fill this comment section up. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs a beautiful love story today. And if you are new here and this is your first time watching, welcome. Subscribe. Because there is so much more coming and you do not want to miss a single one.